Hey, 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 welcome to All Eyes on Young Voters, presented to you by Alliance for Youth Action, and she could be next. I'm DJ Carmen San Diego, and we're going to have a good time for a couple of minutes.
Go ahead, let it snap. I'ma snatch their wigs till I see that scalp. Booty claps, flying across the map. Lambo on the block, looking like a snack. I show you how I do it, show you how it's done. Don't look for another Missy, cause there be no another one. Watch me, good, man. Watch me, good, man. Watch me, good, man. Watch me, good, man.
All right, y'all, we're about to play a little bit of the soundtrack from All Eyes on Young Voters. And She Could Be Next has got an incredible download that you've got to go get. Hello, and welcome to All Eyes on Youth Voters, presented to you by And She Could Be Next and Alliance for Youth Action. Make sure you hashtag us. All Eyes on. I turn that into money. They gotta never settle. This beat is so much better. I'm killing, I'm winning, like on another level. Oh, you can take all you want. See me as a friend, nothing I'm afraid of, and I can have it all. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. Know you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. Know you want this yummy. All right, y'all. All eyes on. Make sure you hashtag us. All right, y'all. Who wants to party with a little bit of Beyonce? This is how we get down with And She Could Be Next and Alliance for Youth Action. right, y'all. I hope you're having a good time at the All Eyes on Young Voters. Brought to you by She Could Be Next and Alliance for Youth Action. Make sure you put the hashtag up, All Eyes On.
Pretty, no Victoria's Secret. In my face, moving fast cause no Uber on the way. Taking pictures, make sure you can see no legs. That week secure like the money in a sack. I feel like babe, now I'm on the way. Let you know when I'm about a mile away. When I'm outside, please don't make me wait. The party's starting when we pull up to the gate.
All right, y'all, all eyes on hashtag.
It's a heartbeat, something calling our mood, and tonight we are 100. Now you're fucked up, baby, my heart keeps beating you. This is what we do. And this is how we do. And this is how we do. I put up doors with my friends, AMG, yeah, on the Benz, ride or die, to the end, I be setting trends, I'm bouncing, I'm the first.
All right, to all the bosses out there, and She Could Be Next, Alliance for Youth Action. I hope you're out there having a good night.
That's right, I'm the one that's tattooed.
We're out here doing it for youth voters. Make sure you hashtag All Eyes On.
I'm the chick that's
And I'm DJ Carmen Spin Diego.
I'm back with an 808, cause I'm bouncing. Let me slow it down so you can catch the flow. Screw it up, make it go extra slow. Real girls get down on the floor. On the floor, get down on the floor. I gave you a taste, you want some more. Touch, let me throw it up like a ball. I ride it like a bicycle, icicle. Ooh, in the 6 floor, cause I can crank sharp. Money making players acting hard. I'm doing the proud. Single give me poppin' with a fade away to start. Diamonds on my neck, diamonds on my grill. Diamonds on my neck, diamonds on my grill. I'm bouncing, I'm the first girl to spin on the track. I switched up the beat of the drum. That's right, I brought all the boys to the yard. And that's right, I'm the one that's tattooed on his arm. I'm bouncing, I'm the bitch y'all love to hate. I'm the chick that's raised to get. I trade drugs and I switch to me. I'm back when they get out again. I'm bullshit. He say the way that thing move is so moving. I tell it, bro, we gotta keep it low.
All right, y'all, you all are listening to And She Got Next. All Eyes on Voter, youth voters. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials and make sure you hashtag.
Hips tick tock when I dance. In that demon time, she might start her OnlyFans. Big beat and that beat stand for bands. If you wanna see some real, then here's your chance. I say left cheek, right cheek, drop it low and swing. Texas up in this thing, get you up in this game. I be talking my frame, gang, 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 gang. If you don't jump to put jeans on, baby, you don't feel my pain. Please don't give me hype, write my name in ice. Can't argue with these baby basics, I just raise my price. I'm a boss, I'm a leader, I pull up in my two-seater, and my mama was a savage. Got this here from Tina, I'm a savage, yeah. Classy, bougie, ratchet, yeah. Sassy, booty, nasty. Acting stupid, what's happening? What's happening? I was savage, yeah. Classy, bougie, ratchet, yeah. Sassy, booty, nasty. Acting stupid, what's happening? What's happening? Trying my integrity. I'm touching the ceiling. When I'm with you, I keep me. What you do something to me.
All right, you all are listening to All Eyes on Youth Voters. And this is brought to you by And She Could Be Next and Alliance for Youth Action. Hope y'all are having a good time. Make sure you hashtag us All Eyes On. something again like you do. This is my heart go wild. Beat it out, the heart go wild. Beat it out, it just won't stop and go wild. Beat it out, the heart go wild. Beat it out, it just won't stop and go wild. How many reasons that I need you, baby, it's true. I think I might outdie you. Feeling all over my body. You know how I like it. Ain't gotta tell you what to do. Yeah. You want the time, baby. Give me that like that. Yeah, I want to love you. You want the time, baby. Give me that like that. I am excited, I'm open-minded, I'm 50-50 and I'm never gonna hide it. You should know, you should know. Oh, summer with nothing to do, 68 Chevy with nothing to do, just rolling J, push loving. And last night, yeah, we go with the dude. I saw him, he was looking at you, so I said, hey. Push loving. Sometimes I just wanna kiss girls, girls, girls. Red wine, I just wanna kiss girls, girls, girls. Sometimes I just wanna kiss girls, girls, girls. Red wine, I just wanna kiss girls, girls, girls.
All right, y'all. Welcome to All Eyes On Young Voters.
I'm so happy that I'm keep on. So long I've waited, never too late for love. It feels so right, so right, that it can't get long. When I am with baby, you make me strong. I'm down for you, and whatever you want to do, it's all up to you. Because anything gonna come to you, it's alright. I'm bound to start with you. You can ride if you choose to.
All right, y'all. Hope you're having a good time at All Eyes On Young Voters.
Say you never ever leave from beside me. 'Cause I want you and I need you. And I'm down for you always, baby. Do you love me? Are you riding? Say you never ever leave from beside me. And I want you and I need you.
All right, y'all. We're partying with All Eyes On Young Voters. Make sure you follow our hashtag and hashtag yourself.
Searching for someone to satisfy my every need. Won't you be my inspiration? you got next? And Alliance for Youth Action. I know somebody up in there is partying.
Oh, baby, when you talk like that, you make the woman go mad. So be wise and keep on reading the signs of my body. I'm on tonight, you know my hips don't lie, and I'm starting to feel it's right. All the attraction, attention, don't you see, baby, this is perfection.
Hey girl, I can see your body moving, and it's driving me crazy. And I didn't have the slightest idea until I saw you dancing. And when you walk up on the dance floor, nobody can ignore the way you move your body, girl. And everything's so unexpected, the way you right and left it. So you can keep on shaking it. Never really knew that you could dance like this. She make a man wanna see Spanish. Como se llama? Bonita. Because Shakira.
Oh, baby, when you talk like that, you make the woman go mad. So be wise and keep on reading the signs of my body. I'm on tonight, you know my hips don't lie, and I'm starting to feel you too. And the next day, just like that, see. I don't care if we get into it and I stall and get out, but I still wake up to make it. You don't make it rain, rain, rain. I can't keep this on the low. I want you to make it rain, rain, rain.
All right, y'all. Thank you for coming to All Eyes on Young Voters. You can hashtag us at AllEyesOn. We're so excited to have you. And they have an incredible album that you have to download.
Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. It's your primitive, it's why I need. It's your primitive, it's why I need. If you got a big, let me search it to find out how hard I gotta work it. It's your primitive, it's why I need. It's your primitive, it's why I need. I like to get to know ya so I can show ya. Put the pussy on ya like I told ya. Give me all your numbers so I can phone ya. If you're acting same thing, call me over. Knock on the bed, lay me on your sofa. Oh, before you come, I need to shave my choke chop. You do or you don't, or you will, I won't chop. Go downtown and eat it like a vulture. See my hips and my tips don't chop. See my ass and my lips don't chop. Lost a few pounds and my lips won't lie. It's the kind of people that go ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Sex me so good I say blah blah blah. Work it. I need a glass of water. Boy, you good to know ya. Is it worth it?
don't think you're ready for this together. I don't think you're ready for this together. I don't think you're ready for this. My body too good in this shit for you. I don't think you're ready for this together. I don't think you're ready for this together. I don't think you're ready.
All right, they ain't ready for our jelly. Come on. Come on, young voters. All right, we're going to turn this party up. Come on, young voters. Or maybe we'll turn it back.
Party's here on the west side, so I reach for my 40 and I turn it up. Designated driver, take the keys to my truck. Hit the shop cause I'm faded. Honey's in my streets, say money, yo, we made it. It feels so good in my hood tonight. The summertime skirts, oh my God, they tonight. All the gangbangers, forgot I'm on the drive-by. You gotta get your groove on before you go get paid. So tip off your cup and throw your hands up and let me hit a party. Say, I'm kind of buzzed and because this is how we do it. Don't say choke up like nobody does. This is how we do it. To all my neighbors, you got much flavor. This is how we do it. Let's flip the track with the old school band. This is how we do it. This is how we do it. All hands are in the air. I'm waving from here to there. If you're an OG Mac or I wanna be player, you see the words been good to me. Ever since I was a lowercase G, but now I'm a big G. The girl think I got the money, $100 bill, Joe. If you were from where I'm from, I'm a bitch.
So songs, this is Kenny Guns. Can't move all of this, you're the one of those. I'm a bitch. Put up to the top down. Kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty kitty cat. Come on, to the kitty fat. Kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty kitty cat. Bring me a glass where I like my water wet. Throw it back. Catch that. I need a jack for all of this. Put it one more flat. Baby, come and eat some of this cake. He look like you could get a little weight. Lick the icing off, put the rest in your face. Slow songs, that's a skinny does. Can't move all of this, here to one of those. I'm a big chick, I need tempo. Get up to the tempo. Get up to the tempo. Get up to the tempo. Slow songs, that's a skinny does.
Ain't no holler back, girl. Ain't no holler back, girl. Few times I've been around that track, so it's not just gonna happen like that. 'Cause ain't no holler back, girl. Ain't no holler back, girl. If you just forget your past, if you wanna make it with me, better make it fast. Now don't go wasting my precious time. Get your act together, we could be just fine. I know you wanna want what I really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I wanna really, really, really wanna say it. If you wanna be my lover, you can be my friend. Make it last forever. Friendship never ends. If you wanna be my lover, you have got to give. Taking is too easy. That's the way it is. What you think about that? Now you know how I feel.
Dance and shake the bread. We just want to party just for you. We just want to party just for you. Party just for me. You ain't gotta dance. Dance and shake the bread.
This is America. Don't got you slipping now. Don't got you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't got you slipping now. Don't got you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't got you slipping now. Look how I'm living now. Police be tripping now. Yeah, this is America. Under my area.
All right, y'all. You are watching All Eyes on Young Voters, brought to you by And She Got Next and Alliance for Youth Action. Make sure you hashtag All Eyes On and let them know you're at the party with us.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. My set's about to end. I got one more song I'm going to play after this one, but I hope that you all enjoyed yourself. I'm Carmen Spin Diego.
Girl,
And you should be hashtagging All Eyes On.
Yo, situation is let's kill it cause we're running out of time. It's all so beautiful. Relationships they see from the start. It's all so happy. The love is not together from the heart. Check it out. It's driving me out of my mind. That's why it's hard for me to find. Can't get it out of my head. Listen, lover. That girl is never trust a big button smile. That girl is
You never make it if you don't try. You gotta believe in something. You gotta believe in something. You gotta believe in something.
All right, y'all, you gotta believe in something. Thank you so much for listening to my set. You are watching All Eyes on Young Voters with And She Got Next and Alliance for Youth Action.
How the dreams emerge from broken ambitions, especially with circumstance and overwhelmed vision, and defeat is passed down like a perfect rendition. We done got loose on closed doors.
And this is from the And She Could Be Next soundtrack, which I hope all of you can download because this is fire.
That's what life is like in a land of brave hearts. We extinguish black stars. It's high when we strike high. Seen a brother pinned up in tertiary strikes, and he still believe he destined for the life. That's the place.
Don't it feel like your dreams are deep as the ocean and wide as the open sky? I know sometimes it seems there's no use in hoping, but you never make it if you don't try. You gotta believe in something. You gotta believe in something. You gotta believe.
I want to encourage all of you to download the And She Could Be Next soundtrack. It is so good.
And it's a long shot. Make sure that your scope's over straight with fuel. So I have the path that makes you safe and down when your mind is escape.
I hear the river turns, I hear the fire burns while she runs. All right, y'all. I'm DJ Carmen Spin Diego. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm about to give it over to our host. Have a great party.
All right, that was awesome, everyone. We are so excited to be here tonight with this incredible panel of young leaders, all at the forefront of demanding for change and building towards a better nation for everyone. So tonight, we have Briyana Joseph, who's the lead organizer for Engage Miami. We have Kelsey Rodriguez, who's the digital organizer for Detroit Action. And we have Raven Douglas, political director for Move Texas. So I'm so excited to be working with such an exciting group of diverse, young, trailblazing leaders. And before we get started, a little bit about the film And She Could Be Next. It's a 2-part documentary series directed by Peabody Award winner Grace Lee and Iranian documentary filmmaker Marjan Safinia. And it tells the story of a defiant movement of women of color who are transforming American politics from the ground up. So let's start from an exclusive clip from the film.
I'm excited that you get to be a part of making your future be what you want it to be. You know, it was really important for me that, you know, young people like you and all of y'all really work with me because, you know, it's your future that's going to be most adversely affected if you're not part of the solutions.
Jay, how did you find the campaign when you first applied to be the chair?
I got an email from Emory about a campaign, and I looked up Lucy, and my mom already knew who you were.
Oh, did she?
Yeah,
What'd she say?
and she was like, "Oh, you wanna work with Lucy? That's awesome! Like, you should totally do that." And like, when I got the internship, she screamed on the phone. She's like, "Oh my God, Lucy!"
Take a picture right now.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
This is my boss and candidate. Lucy Bath. It's my other boss, Jake.
Thank you so much for sharing him with us. Thank you so much for allowing him to kind of shape his future. We're really excited to have him with us. He's phenomenal. Welcome. And mother, you've done well. You really, really have. Let's see if Miss Linda's home.
Hello.
This is Jay. He is one of our volunteers.
All right.
He has personally knocked on how many doors?
I stopped counting.
Yeah.
I like it. I like walking through the streets, meeting people, talking to people. It's great people skill work. You know,
It's a good way to learn
Yeah.
about the United States of America
That's so true.
and this state.
I said from the very beginning, I want as many young people engaged, and to have him standing up and fighting for what he wants his future to look like and being part of that process. That's really, really encouraging to me because I wanted to make sure that millennials and young people like him had a chance. Let them learn how to do this. Let them be a part of the process. Let them, you know, see for themselves what it's like to build their own movement.
Awesome. What a great clip that was. So first part of this segment is called The Moment. It's Young Voters in 2020. So this election cycle, the millennial and Gen Z generations represent more than a third of eligible voters. And as indicated by our unprecedented turnout in the 2018 midterm election, our vote is likely to play a historic role in the upcoming elections. Just as this past week, we lost the icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who once said, "One's lives not just for oneself, but for one's community." So this question's for all three of you. Has her passing shifted your thinking of your work in this moment? If so, how? And any one of you can kick it off.
I can start. I think it definitely has. I think there's a sense of urgency now, making sure that everybody has all the information that they need, that, you know, we make sure that people know what's at stake this election, how important it is that everybody takes that opportunity to vote, and make sure that their voice is heard, because we can't afford to let anybody go silenced this time around.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think, you know, I'm sure 2020 has been difficult for all of us, and not just politically, but with the COVID pandemic and everything. And I think that there have been some instances and times where I've kind of felt like I've wanted to give up. But I think with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it's really sort of like a perception of it's time to grieve, take the moment that you need, but it's also time to regroup and organize. And so I think that a lot of my peers and myself are kind of invigorated as we go into November.
Yeah, similarly to Raven, same for me. I don't really think that her passing has shifted my thinking per se. I think that it's galvanized me, if anything, to want to do as much as I can. So RGB paving the way for future female lawyers, her being the second female Supreme Court justice, and her fight for gender justice. During a time when women were not seen as equals, definitely weren't seen as equals, reminds me of how important this work is when it comes to shifting the narrative and changing our society for the better. And so definitely, galvanized me and is going to help me get through this next few months of helping as many young people turn out to vote as I can.
Love that. Thank you all for sharing. And it's the ripple effect of, unfortunate, tragic outcomes as such that lead to sort of that, like you said, galvanization with all of us. So that's like what we can really hope for. So this first question that I have is to Raven. Can you talk to us a little bit about how young voters can become vote ready during the pandemic and what it means to make a vote plan?
Yeah. So, I think right now with everything going on, especially living in a state like Texas, some of the issues that we have kind of seen, a lack of online voter registration. Texas is only one of 7 states where you have to have an excuse to request a vote by mail. So it's kind of really showing the cracks in our system. So it's super crucial this year that we get vote ready early and make a plan. And essentially what that means is preparing to vote before you even step in the ballot box or file a ballot. So that's, knowing where you're going to go vote, knowing the hours that you're going to go vote, knowing if you need some sort of identification in order to cast your ballot, knowing who you're going to vote. Do now, get ready to vote. And it's super crucial that we do those things early just because things are continuing to fluctuate. And I think that's something that's concrete that we can do now.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing those insights of what a voting plan looks like and what it means to be vote ready, especially during this pandemic and during challenging times as such. So to Briyana, what does it mean to vote early and how is it different from mailing your ballot in early? So it's important for us to discuss the conflicting information on how to vote, trusted sources, etc.
So voting early, typically, and at least in Florida, 2 weeks prior to any election is the time to vote early. And so in Miami-Dade County, for example, we have 33 early voting locations. And so in this election in particular, young people can vote between October 19th to November 1st between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And so that option is a great option because lines, one, are usually really short, and you have a range of polling locations that you can choose from. It's different than voting by mail because you're actually voting in person. And so it's still the typical process that you would do on election day. It's just that you're voting early.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much for that. I think it's so important for people who are willing and able to go out and vote early, especially, you never know what's going to happen on election day or ways to plan around it or anything. So it's super helpful that you gave those tangible tips and what it looks like to vote early. And this is for Kelsey. So a lot of times you hear people talk about the interconnectedness of climate change to healthcare, to politics, etc. So do you see these things as interconnected? And if so, how? Also, which would you address first, assuming that you believe it to be true?
Yes, they are 1000% interconnected. You cannot have one without the other in this state that we're in now with how serious climate change has gotten. And I don't think that we can afford to address one before the other. This truly is an existential problem. We're seeing a rise in health issues because of climate change. It's directly connected to issues with race and the economy. So they all work in tandem, and you truly cannot fix one without fixing the other. There is no such thing as climate justice if you're not addressing racial justice, or if you're not addressing healthcare justice or economic justice. So I don't think that we're at a point where we can pick and choose what we do first.
Yeah, so this actually is a really good question, and I'd actually be curious to hear what our other two panelists have to say to this as well. So Raven, then Briyana, if you two want to chime in, and I can repeat the question if you'd like as well.
No, yeah, I definitely would echo everything that she said. I think that, as you mentioned, you really can't choose one. They're all kind of pressing at the same time. But I think, one of the critical things as we're talking to voters who, I think as young people, there are a lot of things that bring us together, but we're not a monolith. And so whether, healthcare is your first choice or criminal justice or climate change, all of those are important and all of those are impacted by voting. So it's super crucial that we understand, when it comes to climate change, for example, whether your energy provider is municipally owned or privately owned, and what are, the implications of that. And so I think particularly looking at local elections and how those things impact your everyday lives are super crucial. And making that connection to young people, I think will really help them feel like their vote matters and that they can make an impact, in their community.
For sure. Agree with you two so much. They're so interconnected. When I think about Florida, I think about the heat here and how, people who are suffering from the heat the most are actually the ones who don't have access to healthcare oftentimes. And so while I agree we're not at a place where we could choose which one to pick first, I do think that if we can change our political system and elect people who actually have great ideas in relation to healthcare, as well as climate change, that'll be a great start in helping to alleviate some of these issues.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love that you all were able to sort of chime in and answer those questions as well. I really appreciate that. But we're going to take a brief moment and pause here and watch some brief footage from the film. And while we're watching, folks at home, please take a moment to add us at social. So at And She Could Be Next on Facebook or Instagram, or at She Could Be Next on Twitter, and at Alliance for Youth on Facebook and Instagram, or Alliance for Youth on Twitter. And follow the conversation tonight with the hashtag AllEyesOn and hashtag VoteReady.
I was always taught the importance of voting, and then to see people showing up to the polls on election day thinking that they've done everything that they were supposed to do. They registered in time. They went through all of the proper steps. They showed up at their polling place on election day, but some of their votes still didn't count.
State Senator Nikema Williams.
Democracy does not end and stop on election day, and that's the point that we have to get across to people.
But I'm here today as a citizen of Fulton County, a voter in Fulton County, and a very concerned auntie of a sophomore at Spelman College who went to cast her vote at Booker T. Washington High School on Tuesday and was initially told that her name was not on the voter rolls, and she, because I am her aunt and she knew exactly what to say, she pressed the polling official and told them that no, I am registered to vote. I am at my proper location. And they went back and looked and they finally found her name. Well, in the interim, when she asked for a provisional ballot, they told her that they couldn't give her a provisional ballot because they only had 2 left, and it wouldn't be fair for them to give her a provisional ballot and not have any for everyone else. The poll official actually said, in quotes, that wouldn't be fair to the other voters who might need a provisional ballot when we only have 2 left. I know that you're going to do the right thing and make sure that every vote is counted, regardless if it was provisional or on one of your machines on election day. Thank you.
All right, love that. Love all these segments from the film. They really are truly moving. So the next sort of theme for this next conversation is organizing in our communities. And while 2020 has been a particularly chaotic year, we've also seen some beautiful examples of communities coming together. So this is for all of you. And we can start in the order in my screen. So you can start with Raven, then Briyana, then Kelsey. How has your community worked to show up in this moment?
It's almost like, not to your own horn, but it's like, how have we not shown up? I think that COVID has really, traditionally, Texas, again, we don't have online voter registration. So all of our work is in the community, face-to-face, paper to paper, one-on-one every single day. And so we've had to be really innovative in the way that we engage communities, but also, you know, still build in that fun aspect of building voting into the everyday culture of young people, and still making it relevant. And so we've had to try a bunch of different things, but I think some of the things that I'm really proud about is, one, we have really utilized cultural organizing to draw young people in. So that's everything from doing a concert series with local Texas artists that engage young people, to we did for National Voter Registration Day on Tuesday, we did a reverse telethon where you don't call us, we call you. And we called over 85,000 young people to get them registered to vote. And so we've sent out over 400,000 voter registration applications to young people all across the state, and are really working with them to follow up and just really let young people know that although there are some steps and some barriers to getting registered and to voting, it still can be done. It's still possible, and we can get it done together. And so I think that our team across the state, working with a number of different partners, has really been able to show up and show that, you know, even in a different time, we can still, you know, build community and bring everyone together.
Amazing. So people have been showing up and showing out in Miami-Dade County for sure. So there are tons of community fridges that have been popping up. People are having Zoom meetings to keep each other updated on, you know, local decisions being made in relation to COVID. People are supporting each other with filling out unemployment paperwork and navigating housing insecurity. And you know, a lot of people are turning out to commission meetings now as well. I'd say now more than ever before, since the switch to things being virtual and our commission meetings being virtual. And people haven't only been showing up, but they've been speaking at community forum more than I've ever seen. And that's just speaking about individuals, not particularly organizations, just my community in terms of the people who live here. As well as, you know, obviously the organizations in my community are doing awesome work as well. There's been a lot of coalition building, people, you know, sharing the different events, workshops, Instagram live videos that they have going on to try to, you know, involve and engage the community and let them know what's happening around issues such as affordable housing and climate resilience and, well, climate change. And transportation as well. And so I think people have been incredibly innovative with trying to figure out how to navigate everything that's going on right now. And so definitely folks have been showing up and showing out.
Yeah, I think echoing that, Detroit has been amazing. I've only been with Detroit Action for like the past 4 months, but just to see the way that the community comes together, not only in times of crisis, but in times of celebration as well. We've also been working with coalition partners and working on housing security, support for small businesses, economic justice, and really making sure that this is a community for the people who live in it and not the investors who come in and, you know, buy up property that is meant for folks who can, that's all that they can afford. And, you know, I'm really proud to say that we are living in the times that we are living in and seeing how many people are just like tired and ready to do something about it.
Yeah, it's so inspiring to hear that in each of your communities, like things are going really well and that people are continuing to do the good work that needs to be done. I know in my community as well, we also have our local food pantry that's really stepped up to the plate. So I know one of you mentioned like community kitchens and all of that aspect, but they've been doing such incredible work with mobilizing in that community and doing that. And for us, all of our board meetings, right before the pandemic happened, we decided to live stream them on YouTube and have them online and make them more accessible in that way. So it's really nice that we had those systems in place beforehand, but obviously not anticipating that a pandemic at this scale or at this size would be coming, but it's good that we had those things in place as well. So very nice to hear all of that. This question is also for all of you, and we'll go in reverse order this time. So Kelsey, you can start, and then Briyana, and then Raven. So not everyone can vote, but that doesn't mean that they can't be involved and civically engaged. So what else can we be doing right now to stay engaged, especially given the sheer amount of stuff going on?
Yeah, so there are multiple strategies to power and to building power for your community. This fight does not start and end at the ballot box. So organize, talk to people, and that doesn't mean like on a grand scale with an organization. Just talk to the people that you know, talk to your neighbor, your family member, your friends who might not be paying as much attention as you are. And just make sure that they're informed, make sure that they have good information. But I also think that just with the sheer amount of stuff going on in the world right now. Don't try to fix it all. We are people and we are doing the best that we can. And I think, especially with heavy work like this, it's so easy to drain yourself. Do what you can. You know, it might seem like the world is on your shoulders, but you're not in this fight alone.
Definitely. So there are tons of ways to get involved beyond voting. One could be registering your friends to vote or encouraging them to, register themselves. You can volunteer on someone's campaign that aligns with your values. You can also volunteer at a local nonprofit. At Engage Miami right now, we're doing tons of phone banking. We've actually made over 800,000 calls so far to young people to ask them if they're registered to vote, to help them register and come up with a voting plan, and also to help them request their vote by mail ballot if that's something that they're interested in. And so organizations, especially like the civic organizations we're a part of, it's all hands on deck right now. So we need all the help that we could get. Come on. What else? Oh, and most importantly, if you're able to become a poll worker, there is a huge shortage on poll workers right now, at least in Florida. And especially with COVID, I think the average poll worker was 50 years old. And so a lot of those people are, at higher risk than we are, at least for actually getting the virus. And so we need to step up to the plate right now and fill in those shoes, because without poll workers, there's a likelihood that maybe some polling locations will close, and we need as many polling locations open to make sure that our democracy runs smoothly in the way that it's intended to.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that both Kelsey and Briyana said. I think the thing that I will add to that, Texas, living in Texas, we have a relatively large undocumented community. And so these are our neighbors, these are our friends, these are our family. And so I think one of the things that's super crucial that we do is definitely take this, answer the census. It's super crucial right now that every community is counted, whether you're a citizen or non-citizen or undocumented. It's super crucial that we have those resources coming into our communities. And also it'll impact things that will change our voting system, like redistricting and, gerrymandering here in Texas. I think in addition to something else that wasn't mentioned here is I definitely would recommend not only volunteering for an organization or potentially volunteering on a campaign that you're passionate about, but also there is a nationwide election protection coalition that is set in place to really assist voters on the ground while they're voting. And so these people do everything from making sure that polling locations are opening up on time, to if you're an attorney and have a law degree, then actually helping voters who were turned away at the ballot, to just like sitting and surfing the web in case like there are any voters that are in crisis and have turned to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. You can sign up and do that at 866ourvote.org. And again, it's nationwide, so you can choose your state, sign up to volunteer, because I think that'll be super crucial this election.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing those different ways to stay involved and engaged during this time. So in terms of organizing in your communities, what's a piece of advice you have for someone who wants to get engaged but may not know where to start? And let's start with you, Briyana.
So for me, I'd say look into an organization that's doing work around an issue that you care about. I think for me, Engage was the first organization after college that I got involved with. And I've been here for 2 years. I've learned so much about Miami-Dade County, about, the impact that I can actually have as an individual, learning how to organize and just have conversations about what's happening to kind of pull people into the fold and to have more people power, especially when it comes to fighting for what we believe in at the local level, state level, and more. And so that's one of the first steps I have for getting involved is joining an organization. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit per se, but and I think it's really easy right now to kind of get a look into what different organizations are doing, especially because things are virtual. It's as easy as clicking a Zoom link from the comfort of your living room. You don't have to particularly have your camera on. You can just kind of pop in and say, hey, I'm here with good intentions, just trying to learn a little bit. I might be shy, I might be nervous, but there's nothing to be afraid of. And so get involved.
It's a really good piece of advice. Raven, do you want to add on?
Yeah, I think that before even getting involved, I think your mindset is super important. I think a lot of times as young people, we feel like we don't know enough, or we're not smart enough, or we're not an expert on the issue, or we're the youngest person in the room, and that may be intimidating. And I think it's super crucial for young people to understand that lived experiences are enough. The fact that there are increased cancer rates in your community or asthma rates, or, I live in Houston and my community was devastated by Hurricane Harvey a couple of years ago. Like, those are experiences that lead you into this work, and those experiences will make you an expert on the things that you're doing. And so don't think that because you don't have a degree in environmental science that you can't, run for office or, go speak at city council, because, it's super crucial that you're engaging on the things that are important to you, especially if they're impacting you.
Yeah. And finally, Kelsey.
Yeah, I think definitely echoing what Raven said, any organization worth joining is going to center the most impacted people. So your lived experiences are enough to put you in the room, to give you a voice to say something about what you're dealing with, what your community is dealing with. And I think that the best way that you can find organizations to work with is talk to people. I mean, I found Detroit Action just by talking to friends about, wanting to get involved and wanting to be in this world of organizing. Somebody's going to know something. These organizations are working hard to get their name out. So talk to people. And if you can't find an organization, like, start the work on your own. It might not be on a grand scale, like, these organizations that have all these money to power them, but that doesn't matter. The work that you do matters. You have that personal connection with the people in your community to make a difference and for them to want to join you in this movement. So if you can't find exactly what you're looking for, start it on your own. You don't need us.
That's such a good, empowering piece of advice. I feel like for someone watching, to hear that from, all of you really does mean a lot. So I love asking the advice question. So thank you all for answering that. So let's talk a bit about voting. We know it's important to not just vote ourselves if we can, but to help ensure our loved ones are also staying informed and becoming civically engaged. Sometimes it's much easier said than done. But this, again, is for all of you. What's a creative way to help organize our communities and loved ones? And how can we get them more involved, especially right now with so much happening? And Kelsey, you can kick us off with this one.
Yeah, it can be hard to talk to loved ones about politics and social justice issues. But I think, there's a personal stake. Politics is personal, and telling your story and making it personal when trying to talk about these issues is what inspires people to get involved. So I think that when you're talking to people that you know, or sometimes, people that you don't know, depending on how much information you're comfortable giving away, make it personal, because otherwise, you're just talking and they can walk away from that conversation not feeling anything.
Yes. And then Raven, do you want to add on?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's not necessarily creative, but just simply talking about, voting, as Kelsey mentioned, and the impacts of that. I came from a family where we were pretty involved in our community. My mom ran a church. We didn't really talk about voting. And I think a lot of times people think that, especially communities of color, that we don't vote because we're apathetic or we don't care. But a lot of times we don't understand there are a lot of barriers in the system. And I think there is there isn't enough clarity around how the system impacts us. And so I think, again, making it hyper local of, in Texas, we can elect our judges and our DAs and, really hold these people accountable when it comes to our criminal justice system, I think is super important. But I also think that, as I mentioned before, we should do our best to build voting into everyday life. So, I know a lot of states are kind of going back to something that is moderately normal, but it should be normal to go to the movie theater and see voter registration, or it should be normal to go to a restaurant and see someone doing voter registration outside the door. And so I think kind of plugging voter registration and voting into everyday life, I think is super crucial. And I think it'll really help us kind of shift the narrative on voting, who really has the power, and, how we can really make an impact.
Yeah, and then finally, Briyana, do you want to wrap things up with this question?
Sure. Could you repeat it one more time?
Oh yeah, of course.
Please?
It's what's a creative way to help organize your communities and loved ones, and how can we get them more involved, especially right now with so much happening?
Oh, so yes, definitely agree with you too. Figuring out what it is they care about. Like, is it hard to, for example, here in Miami-Dade County, young people can't find anywhere to rent for under $1,400, for example, for a 1-bedroom. And so talking about what we're experiencing, is it lack of affordable housing? Do you wish transportation was better? Do you wish the roads were a bit better, or infrastructure in general? So bringing up the issues, but not talking about it in a way that makes it sound political, just having a conversation about, what we're experiencing, and letting young people know, and letting people know that, we do have a stake in changing what's going on and making our community a better place for everyone who lives here. And so, yeah, I think something that a lot of people are doing right now that's really helpful is using social media as a vehicle and as a way to, connect with each other, as a way to talk about what's going on. And so, I think we should keep digital organizing the way we're doing right now.
I love that you brought up social media. I think that I personally have seen so many pros to social media and ways to mobilize people and get them excited and rallied up against like a common cause or something on there. But I've also seen a bit of cons on social media as well, like the aspect of maybe perhaps like call out culture and whatever your opinion may be on that. But what are some of your thoughts on like the pros and cons of social media? Again, this is just like for each of you. I think it's really, especially with so many young people watching, like ways to be mindful of like the tool that social media is. Raven, if you want, you can start with this one.
Yeah, I think a good pro is obviously like it's educating young people. I think what we're really seeing that is that's really kind of taking off on our social media is kind of those like educational infographics. So like, what's going on with USPS, or, what's happening with the Supreme Court? Like those kind of like 5 to 7 slides have been super crucial and critical and helpful for people who didn't really understand what was going on. And then they can ask follow-up questions or just kind of get brought up to speed on what's happening. And you can do the same thing with voting or poll worker recruitment or whatever that may be. I think a con is definitely like disinformation. I think especially in Texas, there is a concerted campaign to discredit vote by mail. And we know that like voting is about having options. So if you want to vote in person, you should go vote in person. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you should vote by mail if you qualify. And so I think those are kind of some of the like benefits of social media, but also some of the barriers.
Great. And Kelsey?
Yeah, so I'm a digital organizer, so this is like me all day, every day, behind the computer making social media posts. But yeah, I think one of the benefits is, one, you're able to reach so much more people than you would in like a day of knocking doors. And especially now during COVID, when we can't knock doors, we're able to still be in community together. And I think one of the beautiful things about social media is that no matter where you go or where you're at, that we're still able to have that community. But yeah, I think disinformation is the biggest problem with social media, because how do you combat it? You have these bot accounts that look real and they look credible, spreading horrible information and that people are believing, and it's so hard. Like the cognitive dissonance is just not there to, like, if it aligns with their views, to convince them otherwise is so difficult. So finding a way to battle that is definitely the hardest part.
Yeah. And Briyana, you inspired this question. So wrapping things up on the pros and cons of social media.
Honestly, I don't have much to add, but pro, obviously, definitely space, capacity, people actually being able to tune into what's going on, especially folks who may not have had transportation to be a part of these conversations and make it physically to spaces now can click a link and hopefully have access to join that way. Cons, definitely the disinformation. We have to be paying attention to who these organizations are that we're actually getting our information from, making sure that, these Instagrams that we might be looking at are credible, reliable sources that we can get our information from. What else? I think also, I think that's about it for me. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, I think with so many young people watching, I think it's always important to shed light on some of the additional benefits there are to social media, more than just like posting, a selfie here and there and like doing all that stuff, but ways to take it to the next level, especially when it comes to organizing and stuff. So super excited about that. So we're going to pause again for another short clip from the film. And during the break, we ask that you go to allianceforyouthAction.org/vote ready to double check your voter registration status to ensure your hashtag vote ready.
You guys make some noise for March for Our Lives, Georgia! Woo!
Hello. I am the state director for March for Our Lives Georgia, which was founded in Parkland, Florida after a massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. We're not only talking about gun violence prevention, we're talking about the youth voter turnout. If 3 out of 5 young people vote in every election, they will swing every election until the day they die. Now, I don't know about you, but I like having people in office that care about me. And we can't only elect people that are Democrats. We have to also elect Republicans. If a Republican agrees with your policy points and agrees with your issues, elect them. Don't vote off of party, vote off of policy.
You all represent us. You represent the youth who can't vote. So go to the polls and make sure those in the state capitol, those in the U.S. Capitol, and those in the White House are accountable for their decisions. Make yours and others' opinions known and go out and vote. Thank you.
So how powerful is that? If 3 out of 5 young people vote in every election, we could swing every single election that comes. Like, I feel like that's such a powerful statistic that was provided. And again, like so many times, like when I was campaigning, I sort of sought to get like the young people on to vote and the first time voters. And what they said each time was like, well, why does our vote count? Like our vote doesn't matter. Like what does my one vote even do? So what would you say to a young person who I think feels that sort of sentiment, that sort of, I guess it's like this like negative like connotation associated with their voice not mattering? Like what's one thing you would say to someone to sort of assure them that like why their vote does matter? How would you get them to get out and vote? And we can start with you, Briyana.
Yes. So I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Like what would you say to someone who sort of says like their one vote doesn't matter? Like I shouldn't vote. Like how would you sort of like get them to get excited or tell them otherwise?
Oh, great question. So our vote does matter, right? Gen Z and millennials make up 30% of the electorate almost in this country at this point, if not more. And so like the stat said, if we turn out to vote at the same rate that maybe our older counterparts do, we will swing these elections. We can help decide who wins these seats and help decide ultimately what policies potentially are passed, what laws are passed, and kind of what our system looks like and the type of people that are making decisions on our behalf. And so we need to turn out to vote. We're innovative. We're not apathetic, how people say. We have great ideas. And so our vote matters. We should turn out.
Awesome. That was really good. Raven?
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think, kind of from my perspective, one, if our vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be fighting so hard to disenfranchise us. And I think that that's super critical. But also, two, it's just the numbers don't lie. So, 3 out of 5 young people in this country can swing an election. In Texas, 1 in 3 eligible voters are under the age of 30, and 63% of them are young people of color. So we are the community. And so if we just show up and vote like it, we can really impact the election and, potentially like what happens after that. So I definitely think that, a part of the system is making us feel like, or a part of kind of voter suppression is making us feel like our vote doesn't matter, or they don't care about what we think or our issues. But that's just playing into their game. And so I think it's super critical that we show up and we turn out to vote so that we can take our power back.
Awesome. And Kelsey?
Yeah, so in Michigan, in 2016, Donald Trump won the state by 10,000 votes. That is only 2 votes in every precinct in Michigan. So the idea that like your vote does not count is false. We need every vote counted because that's as small of a margin that they can win by. And I think that a lot of young people are kind of disillusioned with the voting process right now because they don't feel properly represented. But just like the clip said, we're voting on policy. And like I said earlier, this does not end at the ballot box. It's a matter of holding your elected officials accountable, no matter what party they represent.
Super well said. I personally won my election by 53 votes. So yeah, especially at the local level, yeah, you're able to see those numbers play out and unfold. So that's like what my answer is. I'm like, hey, like your individual vote truly did it. So now let's talk a bit about like what's at stake. So the 2020 electorate is shaping up to be more progressive than 2016 on a range of social and economic policy issues, including healthcare and poverty. So it feels like we're told every election year that this is the most important one yet, but this year truly does feel different. So again, this is for all of you. What makes this election important to you? And we can start with you, Kelsey.
Yeah, I think the past 4 years have been hard. I think like to see all of the issues that have arisen between just this past year with COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement, and like these things finally exploding. We can't afford to have the wrong people in office anymore. Like we're running out of time to change things. It feels, like I said earlier, very existential. Like I'm nervous for election day. Like I just want to make sure everybody's voting, because we really, like I said, just can't afford with the current state that we're in to have the wrong people in office.
Yeah. And Briyana?
So I feel like everything's at stake this election, from climate justice, affordable health care, community safety, immigrant rights. The list goes on. Literally any issue you name is at stake right now. And I feel like COVID showed us how broken our system actually is. And so we need to make sure that we're electing people who have what it takes to fix it and who, has everyone's best interest in mind. So everything's at stake. And so we need to turn out and show out like it is.
Yeah.
And Raven?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. And I think, just speaking from a voting rights perspective, I think there's just so much on the line related to, the passing of HR 1 and, trying to reinstate pre-clearance for states like Texas who have a history of voter suppression. At the state level, we have our legislative session next year, and we're probably closer now more than ever to getting things like online voter registration or standardizing our, volunteer deputy registrar process and all of those things. And so I think that there are so many barriers that we can break down if we just, again, all come together, turn out to vote, and really build or elect representatives who represent us.
Yeah. Thank you all. So according to Gallup, about 90% of young Americans aged 18 to 29 are supportive of racial justice protests happening throughout the country, with over 70% feeling personally connected to the protests. So right now, the quest for racial justice is a major central point of concern for young folks. So again, to Raven, Kelsey, and Briyana in that order, in your opinion, what's one crucial thing young folks can do right now to help acquire true lasting change?
That's a good question, because I think, I flip between like wanting to bring it all down, wanting to give up, and then wanting to reorganize. But I think one of the things that young people can do is one, obviously vote. I also think too, the Black Lives Matter movement, yes, is it about policing and criminal justice reform, but it's also really about reimagining what public safety looks like in our communities. It's about how do we heal Black communities from the trauma of being terrorized by police. It's about imagining how we can keep our communities safe while minimizing the over-policing that's happening. And so I think, I encourage young people to, when we look at this big scope of criminal justice, of public safety, figure out what you're passionate about, and dive into that. So whether it is, prison reform, whether it's policing, whether, as I mentioned, it's mental health, I think that I think we're going to need to really look at the larger picture when it comes to what's happening right now to really kind of dismantle that system.
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice would be don't stop. I know it's hard, especially coming off of, disappointing, to say the least, decisions like we saw with Breonna Taylor's case. But I also think that like letting this movement die out with the momentum that we have right now would be a mistake. And that is as simple as retweeting so that one more person sees this information. We've been going all summer with the protests and with people spreading information on social media so that people who are on the ground can see it. And I think that continuing with that momentum, they won't have a choice but to listen to us.
Can't agree more with what both of you have said so far. My goodness. Yeah, we can't take our feet off the brakes right now. We can't take our foot off the brakes. I agree with that so much. We need to make sure that we're voting, especially in local elections, because, our mayor, along with our local government, are the ones who decide what our policing looks like for the most part. And so we need to make sure that we're voting in those elections and paying attention to local elections as well. I think something else that people can do right now is, participate and join into any orgs that are doing the radical work of reforming our criminal justice system, reforming our policing system, people that are thinking outside of the box to, make community safety by and for the community. And so, for example, Dream Defenders, that's an organization here in Florida, did a lot of work to help reinstate a police oversight committee in Miami-Dade County. And so with the coalition of orgs, actually, I think this just happened last month or so, we actually won that. And so that gives us a bit more say in what's going on and a bit more of a look into what's going on with at least our police. And so just get involved in any way, shape, or form.
Awesome. Yeah, great responses, you all. Super, I think, such an insightful conversation, and you all come from like, more or less like similar like waves of thought, but also very different backgrounds. And I think that this is a really good conversation that we have going on. So we have only 2 more questions left. So we're going to start wrapping things up then. But with the hurricane and storm season well underway and the horrific fires ravaging through the entire West Coast, it's hard to not bring up the urgent need for climate justice immediately. So while we're all impacted by climate change, climate justice recognizes it as a social justice issue with socioeconomic and racial implications. So again, this is for all three of you. We'll go Briyana, Kelsey, then Raven. What does climate justice mean to you, and what does it actively look like for you at this moment?
So climate justice for me starts off with one, believing in climate change and believing in science. I think it also looks like creating real policies that will affect real tangible change around climate. I think that also looks like incentivizing developers, for example, to build green, incentivizing businesses to, make their businesses more climate friendly. And so those are just a few of the first couple of steps that I think we could take to make our communities more climate resilient overall and to affect and make climate justice a thing.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, all of these like socioeconomic issues are kind of in tandem with climate change. But one of the things that I think that people don't realize how closely related climate change and racial justice issues are. And I don't think that we can have climate justice without racial justice, because who are we making the climate better for? If you think of like the suburbs compared to the inner city, the demographic of those two different areas, and then like the air quality, because the inner city is filled with factories and large corporations. And I think, you think of these natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina and the response to that, or Hurricane Maria and the response to that, these cities that are filled with Black and brown people who are just getting left behind. And so I don't think that we can talk about climate justice without talking about racial justice. I don't think that there will be true climate justice until there is racial justice.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And, just to echo what Kelsey said, here in Texas and Louisiana along the border, there are cities like Port Arthur and New Orleans and Lake Charles, and these are Black communities. And these are people who settled in these communities because, one, in a way they were forced to, because these lands were seen as not desirable. New Orleans is essentially a swamp when it was developed. And, we've been put in these areas, and then we're affected by climate change, and then they put coal plants in these neighborhoods and power plants in these neighborhoods that give off really bad emissions. And so I think that, just as Kelsey said, climate change is a racial justice issue, and until we look at it through that lens, I don't think that you could look at it any other way.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. And so this is our last question. So as you wrap up our final segment, I just want to ask everyone, what's one final thought, affirmation, parting words or wisdom that you have that you'd like to leave our viewers with? And we can go Kelsey, Briyana, then Raven.
Yeah, I would just say that please know that we need you. We need you to vote. We need you to get involved. Your voice matters more than you know. And we cannot build power in our communities and make a change without your help.
I want to say, one, so glad to be on this panel with such amazing leaders in the community. Two, we got power, y'all. We're powerful. We're powerful, and we need to use our power to make sure that we're building communities that care about everyone's well-being, where everyone can have the agency to be their best self and have the support that they need to be their best self. And so if we turn out to vote the way that we should, I think that we'll have a huge impact. I know that we'll have a huge impact in this election, and in turn in little policies that are being determined on our behalf and the decisions being made. And so we need to pay attention. We need to hold our elected officials accountable. And most importantly, we need to vote and make sure that we're paying attention to what's happening in our community so that we can continue being the leaders that we need to be.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I would leave with young people is that I think it's super crucial to understand that sometimes change is slow. And sometimes it doesn't happen as quickly as we want it to. But, you know, the work doesn't stop after November 3rd. On November 4th, we will still need you in our communities, volunteering and getting involved. And so just if November 3rd doesn't go the way that you expect it to go, again, like I mentioned, grieve, regroup, and then we can organize again. But as I said, don't give up on after November 3rd.
Awesome. So in like 3 words each, we need you, we got power, and change is slow. So super wise words from all of you. Well, that's all that we have for today. So thank you again to Raven, Kelsey, and Briyana for your super inspiring, thoughtful comments, words, and remarks. I so appreciated being on this panel with you all. You are such brilliant individuals, and I was super lucky to, share this past hour with you all. A huge thank you to DJ Carmen Spin Diego for opening the event, and of course, our viewers who joined us tonight. So before we go, a couple of quick reminders. And She Could Be Next is still available for streaming via various platforms. So to learn more about how and where you can watch, please visit andshecouldbenext.com/watch. And getting #VoteReady is one of the most powerful ways we can fight for our democracy. And that power is in our hands. Use Alliance's #VoteReady Center and start making your plan today. So go to www.allianceforyouthAction.org/voteready to register to vote. Know what's on your ballot, get involved with national campaigns, and get connected with our network and organizations like the amazing ones represented here on this panel. Thank you, and good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.